These are the stories making the headlines at this hour. North Korea has notified Japan of launching what appears to be a spy satellite sometime between this Wednesday and December 1st. The U.S. speculates that the regime's third attempt comes with Russia's help. Seoul and Washington have warned against the launch that will violate UN Security Council resolutions. President Yoon Suk-yeol is in London for a state visit. South Korea and the UK are set to upgrade their relations where they expand high-tech cooperation and agree to first joint sanctions action against North Korea. U.S. President Joe Biden believes a deal is close that will release 50 hostages held by Hamas in exchange for Israel's three-day ceasefire and more aid into Gaza. Good afternoon. North Korea has notified Japan of launching what appears to be a spy satellite sometime between this Wednesday and December 1st. The U.S. speculates that the regime's third attempt comes with Russia's help. Seoul and Washington have warned against a launch that will violate UN Security Council resolutions. Lee Seung-jae sources off.
North Korea has notified Japan that will be making its third attempt to send a military reconnaissance satellite into space sometime between November 22nd and December 1st. According to Reuters, Pyongyang notified Japan's Coast Guard and said the planned launch would be in the direction of the West Sea and East China Sea. The notice comes after the regime initially had planned to make its third attempt at a military spy satellite launch in October, following two botched launches in August and May, but did not go ahead with the plan. The U.S. Department of State reiterated its concerns on Monday over possible military cooperation between North Korea and Russia amid the looming spy satellite launch. According to the department spokesperson Matthew Miller, any transfer of military technology between North and Russia would violate multiple UN Security Council resolutions, adding that Washington would continue to monitor the actions of both parties with their regional allies and respond to North Korea's destabilizing behavior. North Korea's third launch comes amid speculation that Russia might have provided military technology for the planned launch in exchange for military equipment and munitions for use in the Ukraine war. Meanwhile, on Monday, South Korea's military warned North Korea to stop any preparations to launch a military reconnaissance satellite immediately. Chief Director of Operations at the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Kang Woo-pil, vowed to take necessary measures if Pyongyang were to ignore the warning. Although Kang did not elaborate on what those measures would be, the government is widely anticipated to partially suspend the Inter-Korean Military Pact signed in 2018, also known as the September 19th Military Agreement. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
President Yoon Suk-yeol is in London for a state visit. South Korea and the UK are set to upgrade their relations where they expand high-tech cooperation and agree to first joint sanctions action against North Korea. Yoon's official engagements will begin on Tuesday. Our Oh Soo-young has the details.
South Korea and the United Kingdom will upgrade their relations to a global strategic partnership upon President Yoon Suk-yeol's state visit this week, issuing high-tech areas of cooperation and the first joint sanctions action against North Korea's security threat. Yoon's office said Monday that Seoul and London will adopt the Downing Street Accord, setting out deeper cooperation in future trade and innovation upon 140 years of bilateral ties. Speaking to Korean expats at a banquet on Monday, shortly after touchdown, the South Korean leader hinted that the accord would expand cooperation in trade and cutting-edge sectors, as he stressed that the two countries are partners in the universal values of freedom, human rights and the rule of law.
저의 이번 방문을 통해 한영 양국은 사이버 안보와 방위 산업 등 안보 분야의 협력 체계를 새롭게 구축해 나갈 것입니다. 뿐만 아니라 한영 FTA 개정 협상을 다시 시작해서 공급망과 교역의 협력 기반을 더욱 공고하게 다져 나갈 것입니다.
This includes agreements on strengthening supply chains and joint research in critical high-tech areas such as semiconductors, artificial intelligence and quantum technology, as the two countries seek new growth engines and economic security amid trade and global uncertainties. The two countries also plan to strengthen their capabilities to respond to cyber threats by concluding a strategic cyber partnership, as well as expanding joint training and promoting joint maritime patrols to enforce UN Security Council sanctions against North Korea. This will be the first time that South Korea and the UK have performed joint operations to enforce sanctions on Pyongyang. The two countries will also pen a document on defence industry cooperation, space and clean energy. Furthermore, the Downing Street Accord will express their joint views on global affairs, including North Korea's nuclear threat, conflicts in the Middle East and Ukraine, and security in the Indo-Pacific. In addition, the two governments will agree to strengthen multilateralism and the rules-based international order through institutions like the UN Security Council, G20 and G7.
President Yoon's state visit will mark another 100-year leap forward in bilateral ties, which have shown a history of deep cooperation and solidarity since the first Treaty of Amity and Commerce was signed in 1883.
President Yoon's first official day of the visit begins on Tuesday. He and First Lady Kim will receive the full royal treatment, a guard of honour followed by a welcoming reception and lunch at Buckingham Palace. The first couple will also pay their respects to Korean war veterans and the grave of the unknown warrior at Westminster Abbey. While reflecting on the past, President Yoon will set out a more comprehensive future partnership between the two liberal democracies based on their shared values, as he delivers a speech in English to members of both houses of parliament. His meeting with UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak on Wednesday and various economic engagements, including a business forum and a roundtable of scientific minds, will put the future bilateral partnership into motion. Oh Si-young, Arirang News, London.
U.S. President Joe Biden believes a deal is close that will release 50 hostages held by Hamas in exchange for Israel's 3-day ceasefire and more aid into Gaza. This comes as Israeli military operations are putting medical facilities under severe strain. Our Moon Hye-ryun has the details.
Speaking to reporters at the White House on Monday, U.S. President Joe Biden said he believes a deal to secure the release of hostages being held by Hamas is close. According to Reuters, Qatari mediators have been leading negotiations that could potentially lead to the release of 50 hostages in exchange for a 3-day ceasefire and further aid for Gaza. Around 240 hostages were taken during a deadly attack on Israel by Hamas on October 7th. The ferocity of the attack, which killed around 1,200 people, prompted Israel to invade the Gaza Strip. Israeli operations against Hamas in Gaza has put the spotlight on medical facilities within the enclave, with hospitals suffering power cuts and lack of medical supplies. According to health officials in Gaza, at least 12 people were killed at the Indonesian hospital in northeastern Gaza on Sunday night after it was hit by artillery rounds. The IDF says it took action after being fired upon from the facility. And 28 premature babies were evacuated from the Al-Shifa hospital on Sunday, with medical services crippled by Israeli attacks. 8 infants have reportedly died at the hospital, and the World Health Organization reported that all of the evacuated babies were fighting serious infections. Israeli troops seized the hospital last week to look for a tunnel network belonging to Hamas Islamists and said that the departure of hundreds of patients and medical staff was voluntary. They also claim to have located a rocket-making workshop inside a mosque in Gaza City. A spokesperson from the IDF accused Hamas of using Islam and the symbols of Islam to create terror. And fighting Gaza also resulted in telecommunication services in the region going down last Friday due to the damage to infrastructure and power outages. The United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs has sent its emergency telecommunications cluster to set up solar-powered panels for power and to reconnect telecommunications. It also plans to give out wireless radio devices and is waiting in Egypt to be allowed access into the Gaza Strip. Moon Hye-ryun, Arirang News.
Tours to the inter-Korean border village of Panmunjom will partially resume on Wednesday, 4 months after an American soldier illegally crossed over to North Korea. According to the Unification Ministry on Tuesday, the National Institute for Unification Education will hold a special field trip to Panmunjom on the day, with about 20 people, including policy advisors and North Korean defectors. The decision to partially resume tours came as the Unification Ministry discussed the issue with the United Nations Command, which has jurisdiction over the Joint Security Area in Panmunjom. The UNC completely suspended Panmunjom tours on July 18th after U.S. soldier Private Travis King crossed the military demarcation line without permission and defected to North Korea from a tour. The popularity of South Korean dish kimchi is spreading to further corners of the world as its exports reached a record 93 countries this year. The milestone comes as Kimchi Day that falls on November 22nd could also be officially recognized by the U.S. Jin has the full story.
South Korea's national dish, kimchi, is gaining popularity around the globe. The side dish, typically made from fermented cabbage, salt, and hot peppers, is eaten with nearly every meal in Korea. And its popularity is spreading around the world as data compiled by the Korea Customs Service showed on Tuesday that kimchi exports between January and October came to $130 million. That's a 10% on-year increase from the $118.6 million tallied for the same period last year. But also, the number of export destinations increased from 87 countries last year to 93 nations so far this year. By destination, Japan took up 40.5% of kimchi exports over the 10-month period, followed by the United States, the Netherlands, Britain, and Hong Kong. The global peak in interest for the side dish hit a record high in 2021, which was driven by increased demand from health-conscious consumers during the COVID-19 pandemic. And experts are suggesting that with the current trend, the annual kimchi exports for this year may surpass the record of $159 million set in 2021. November 22nd is celebrated in Korea as Kimchi Day, and this day has also been publicly introduced in 12 states or cities of the United States, including Washington, D.C., California, New York State, and Virginia, as well as other cities and countries like Argentina, Sao Paulo, and the Royal Borough of Kingston-upon-Thames in London. In the United States, passage of the House resolution that was introduced last April by Representative Kim Young and 14 co-sponsors aiming to officially designate November 22nd as Kimchi Day will be determined in a plenary meeting on December 6th. Jin, Arirang News.
Samsung Electronics had the largest share of the global TV market in the third quarter, while LG Electronics took the top spot in the global OLED TV market. According to market research firm Omdia on Tuesday, Samsung Electronics recorded a nearly 30% market share in terms of sales, up 2.4% from the previous year. The growth was led by strong sales of its premium TVs such as Neo QLED. Samsung's strong performance puts it in a good position to hold the top spot in the global TV market for the 18th year in a row. Meanwhile, LG Electronics' strong OLED TV sales have raised expectations that it will top the OLED market for the 11th straight year. South Korean boy band Stray Kids have entered the Billboard Hot 100 chart for the first time with lead track LALALALA from their newly released album Rockstar. On Monday, Billboard announced that Stray Kids had debuted at number 90 on the Hot 100, which is based on the streaming activity of listeners across the United States. Stray Kids is the second K-pop boy group to chart on Billboard Hot 100 following BTS. The album Rockstar was released on November 10th, giving the band its fourth number one on Sunday by topping the Billboard 200 chart. OpenAI, one of the frontrunners in the field of artificial intelligence, is struggling with a leadership crisis. With the recent dismissal of the company's co-founder Sam Altman, hundreds of employees are threatening to quit in protest and follow the former CEO to Microsoft. Song Yoo-jin reports.
The leadership shakeup at OpenAI, the American company behind leading AI chatbot ChatGPT, is facing a backlash. As of Monday morning local time, over 650 out of the company's 770 employees signed a letter threatening to quit and follow ousted former CEO Sam Altman to Microsoft unless the board of directors steps down. Microsoft, a close partner and billion-dollar investor of OpenAI, announced on Sunday that Altman will be leading its new advanced AI research team. The letter says the board's handling of Altman's dismissal made it clear that it's incapable of overseeing the company. OpenAI co-founder and board member Ilya Sutskever, who reportedly voted for Altman's firing, expressed regret over the decision. Sutskever posted an apology on X, formerly known as Twitter, on Monday, saying that he hoped to reunite the company following Altman's dismissal. Altman was ousted last Friday by the company's board of directors. Though the reason has not been made clear, the board's open letter said Altman was, quote, not consistently candid in his communications with the board. 송유진, Arirang News.
Over in Argentina, right-wing populist Javier Milei has become the country's new president. The new leader pledged a new political era and drastic economic reform, including replacing the peso with the U.S. dollar. Chung Won-ju has more.
Right-wing libertarian Javier Milei won Argentina's presidential election on Sunday, following a polarized campaign in which he promised drastic changes to the country's economic strategy amid its worst crisis in 2 decades. According to Argentina's electoral authority, Milei won by a wider-than-expected margin as he landed some 56% of the vote versus just over 44% for his rival, Peronist Economy Minister Sergio Massa, when 99.4% of the votes were tallied. It is the highest percentage that a presidential candidate has received since the South American country's return to democracy in 1983. Massa conceded the runoff vote on Sunday evening in a brief speech even before official results were announced. Milei is pledging reforms for Argentina's economy with plans that include shutting the central bank, replacing the peso with the U.S. dollar, and slashing spending by up to 15% of gross domestic product. His challenges are enormous, however, as he will have to deal with soaring inflation nearing 150%, a $44 billion U.S. debt program with the International Monetary Fund, and spreading poverty. His victory marks an extraordinary rise for the former television commentator, which drew comparisons to that of former U.S. President Donald Trump. Milei entered the race as a political outsider and self-described anarcho-capitalist. He stirred controversy throughout the campaign for his aggressive rhetoric and expressing support for anti-abortion, ideas such as legalizing the sale of human organs and eliminating all gun laws. He also criticized China and Argentine Pope Francis, though he later walked back on those statements in an effort to win over centrist voters in the weeks following October's first-round vote, when he came second to Massa. Milei also shelved the chainsaw he used to carry in a symbol of his planned cuts in recent weeks to help boost his moderate image. Milei's win shakes up Argentina's political landscape and economic roadmap, along with international trade. He will officially take office on December 10th. Chung Won-ju, Arirang News.
Let's take a look at what's going on in the world now. In Europe, an Italian court on Monday convicted and sentenced over 200 mafia members and their white-collar associates. The largest mafia trial in 3 decades, the convicted received a total of around 2,200 years of prison sentences. Held in the town of Lamezia Terme, in a specially constructed high-security courtroom that can hold up to 350 defendants and 400 lawyers, Monday's sentencing represents one of the most significant blows to Italy's most powerful organized crime group, the Ndrangheta mafia. Although more than 100 individuals were acquitted, notable persons such as former Forza Italia Senator Gianluca Pitelli and former high-ranking police officers were sentenced along with well-known regional mafia bosses. The Ndrangheta mafia from Calabria, Italy, operates in about 40 countries and has a near monopoly on European drug trafficking. Monday's verdict marks the end of the 3-year-long maxi-trial, which was based on the biggest police operation against the crime syndicates since the 1986 to 1992 Palermo maxi-trials, which convicted 475 people. On Monday, the latest edition of the United Nations Environmental Programme's Emissions Gap Report was published with a gloomy forecast in terms of global warming. According to the report, the Earth is set to warm by 2.5 to 2.9 degrees Celsius compared to pre-industrial times, suggesting that global emissions must be cut by 42% by the end of the decade if the 1.5 degrees Celsius limit target adopted by the 2015 Paris Climate Agreement is to be met. The new report also showed that carbon emissions from the use of coal, oil and gas rose 1.2% last year. The report comes ahead of UN's climate change conference, COP28, which begins on November 30th in Dubai. Colombian pop star Shakira has reached a deal with Spanish prosecutors over allegations of tax evasion, avoiding what may have been a more than 8 years prison sentence. The multiple Grammy and Latin Grammy winner Shakira admitted on Monday a failure to pay a total of $15.8 million in tax to the Spanish government between 2012 and 2014 and received a suspended 3-year sentence as well as a fine of $7.6 million. Shakira's public relations representative confirmed that she has already paid the owed sum in full, as well as an additional $3.2 million owed in interest. Kimchi, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. We had a cold start to the day, but highs are rising fast along with sunshine, especially noticeable in Gyeongju, where you might witness temperature gaps nearing 20 degrees Celsius today. Along with the East Coast, anticipate highs hovering around the 20 degrees Celsius mark today. Meanwhile, the dry weather advisory has been expanded, covering more areas of east of Gangwon-do and Gyeongsang-pukdo provinces. Given this, exercise caution to avoid any activities that could spark fires. Afternoon highs are 1 to 3 degrees higher this afternoon. Seoul tops out at 14 degrees, but Jeju and Gyeongju will be very warm and nice under sunny skies at 19 degrees. Decent air quality nationwide under sunny skies today. Then the next few days in the capital promise to be the final stretch of this season's high temperatures in the teens. Keep an eye out for rain midweek. That will bring a significant drop in readings starting Friday. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
North Korea's attempt to launch a spy satellite seems imminent, with the apparent help of Russia. Meanwhile, China, a close ally of North Korea, remains silent, with no mentioning of the matter when leaders of the U.S. and China met at the APEC summit. And no summit was held there between South Korea and China, when both Seoul and Washington are calling for Beijing's constructive role in dealing with Pyongyang. But amid North Korea's increased dependency on China and ahead of a pivotal meeting between top diplomats from South Korea, Japan, and China in the lead-up to Leaders' Summit, some speculate that North Korea had no option but to discuss its plan with China, and that China might have given it a silent okay. That is all for today. Thanks for watching.